Welcome or welcome back to day 62 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Now let's see if we can keep our upwards streak going here today, or if I just jinxed us and we get a loss. Let's have a look here. We get... This is Brazil, right? Yeah, there we go. Oh, AU Linho 1. We'll play 1d4 again. As I've been mentioning for a while, I will be looking into the English again at some point, when I get the time to do so. The Horwitz defense is not something I'm familiar with, but I guess this should still be okay. We could transpose into a Queen's Gambit declined, or potentially an accepted one. Let's move our knight up, I guess. They could take. Now we might have something like this. I'm not expecting them to take, but lately we've had surprisingly many players taking the pawn. In this position we also had knight to c3, but I have not quite had time to look into... Oh, they played into this variation. They moved the knight out. This should be the main line, I'm pretty sure. I'd like to get the bishop off, bishop out rather, before potentially closing up with e3 here. And this is a transposition into the traditional variation. Now this should be a logical move. We could play this as well. Let's have a look here. Let's say they castle. No, we don't really... We could take here, I guess. But we don't really threaten anything, so let's just go here instead. And see what they do. I'm expecting h6, after which we will drop back. They might castle, or play a combination of some pawn moves over here. We get this, and now I think we once again have this option. This might be an option, but I think this is probably better. I'm not quite sure as to what the best pawn move is, but because this bishop is blocked off, I think the activity here looking towards the king seems to be better. Now, I would like to have a look at this, but honestly at some point I think we want the rooks on the c-file, and then the queen doesn't really belong there. So instead we will go here, and if they capture, I guess we spend an extra move. But that's not the end of the world. Our opponent could jump in here. Then we probably have to take. And in the following position, I guess we could apply pressure on the knight, but then they might have this. So let's say they jump in, we might have this, and we might be forced to capture now, and then try to apply pressure. Because then they don't get this incredibly powerful outpost with pawns locking it in place. But if we do get this and go here and this, is this okay for us? Then they take here. They don't really have this pawn supporting the other pawns. which might be a good thing for us. But then this bishop opens up, they could look for a pin or come towards our king. I'm not quite sure as to what the best idea is in that line. We'll just have to see what happens here. We get this instead. No, I think we can come up here. Or we could play captures. Let's say we take. If they take here, I don't think we want to take in that case. Instead, maybe coming up here with the queen. The thing I don't quite like then is this move, which is why I was looking at capturing first. I just want to create a threat here, combining it with the bishop, but probably castling might just be better. So let's play solid first and then play tactically. This might be a move, playing for this and bishop development. The a-pawn might move. The only real way here for our opponent to develop this bishop is going to be through the b7 square probably, unless they come around like this, which doesn't really look quite ideal. We might have some position here where we trade on this square and try to come back with our bishop and play with our rook and bishop perhaps. That might be an idea. I see for once though our opponent is actually using their time. It's not often that we are about on par with our opponent in terms of time management. This. They take. I guess we have to take. Now the C file is maybe in. It might be possible for us to play in the C file. I think they might have had C5 here. They don't play it, instead they jump in like this. I don't think we want to. We can't drop back this, and then this doesn't look ideal. Let's have a look at the line where we capture. If they capture, I don't quite like this line. I think we have to take here first. This doesn't look ideal, at least. So we either capture the knight or the bishop. Because we can't really generate a greater threat. So let's take the bishop. Honestly, I'm expecting both moves to be okay. It might just even be a matter of preference. Now this knight, we might not want to get it onto c3 for the time being. We want our rooks here, probably. So this might be a good move, maybe trying to get it out here. Our opponent takes back with the knight. So which ideas do we have? This bishop doesn't quite belong on c4, but moving it well, it's not quite urgent. There might even be an argument for e4, grabbing space in the center. Instead, though, I'd like to get this knight out, work towards connecting our rooks, and then take it from there. Because I can't see a threat here. We could try to come up here, but we don't have enough pieces. So let's bring this knight up and see what they do. Once again, this might be a move. Now this, yeah, it might still be a move. Because of this knight. So I might prefer getting the knight to b3 even. Controlling this, because then they don't have this, trying to dislodge our knight. They could always play c6, but it's honestly not the best move. They move this knight over. Is it for this outpost? But they can't really use it yet. It might seek to place a knight here. But I don't think that's too bad for us. So what should we do here? This might be an idea. I would like to move the queen. In terms of queen movement, we might have b3. Just staring down at some pawns here. Or this move, which doesn't do a whole lot. This prevents this idea though. So instead we might play this first, but then they come in here, and that's not quite ideal. So instead we might move the queen over here and then prepare rook movement. Or we might move this rook first, but this rook might be the one we want to move first because this one might want to defend the pawns. So let's come up here and then we will take it from there. This might still be a move. Our opponent doesn't quite play it. We might see some kingside play here considering their knight movements. We might have time now to play the bishop back. Because as I mentioned, we don't really like it on this square, I'm pretty sure. It doesn't do a whole lot and it blocks our plans. So this might be a configuration, but we might keep this knight on d2 for the time being. To have the option of playing over against a potential attack. This might be a move, but then this c-pawn becomes a sitting duck, I think. And then we can start piling on pressure. I was looking at this idea, trying to open up the bishop, but I don't think it works. Let's say we get this, and they take. I think we just win a pawn. And then we could try to play solidly. Well, our opponent plays here, trying to get the bishop up like this. We can't take this diagonal first because of this knight. But I don't think we have to worry, this knight is covered. So instead, let's look at the c-pawn as I mentioned, and let's use this rook because those pawns here might be targeted. Honestly, there might not be any ways of doing so just now. but down the line they might this, and I guess we double rooks. Now which square is best? It might not matter all that much, but I would like to argue for this square, because if we have an idea like this and we take, then we keep our bishop protected. Just want to make sure we can't get easily hit here, because there is this idea. And this doesn't quite work, but this might be annoying. So instead, let's augment our plans a bit here and play further back, covering our second rank. This is no threat. Well, our opponent might build up behind this pawn, but we'll have to see. This rook, how is this going to join the game? Well, if this knight moves to d5, protecting the pawn, they might play for f4 and involving it in an attack, perhaps. That might be an idea, which we might have to be wary of. Currently our queen is locked in by our pieces, but that's likely to open up at some point. I'm quite unsure here, I'm noticing, as to whether our bishop or theirs is better, which is why I'm considering this move, or rather I'm trying to figure out whether this is what we want or not. This looks powerful for their bishop. I don't quite like this. We might have to play b3, or we could play like this and just give up the light squares. If this knight moves, I'm noticing we might have ideas here of e4, which would be weakening, or we could pin it to the bishop. But then this comes in, and that might not quite be ideal. We'll have to see what happens. The queen can't do a whole lot right now, but let's say they try to come for an attack. They might try to bring it in if they trade off our knight. But this knight is covering our other knight, an idea I missed in a recent game. So let's try to make a mental note. This is not a threat. Not yet, at least. This doesn't work. I was looking at this line and trying to calculate here. What I was thinking is, what if they take? And we get this, for example. But then our queen is still defending our bishop, because our knight could capture. So this knight is currently quite important, in some lines at least. But things might change quite quickly. Well, if our opponent comes behind the pawn here, which might be an idea, then we could try to force a trade and come in with activity. That might work. I don't quite have an idea for if the queen comes behind the pawn. Then we might just double up, I think. But still, this is an idea which we might try to counter with e4 if it wins a pawn for us. The queen comes up. Okay. Now this does stare down at this pawn. That's not a worry though, because we are covered. So we could come over here. This might hit us. Well, that's not an immediate threat. So let's just stack towers and see what they do. This, as I mentioned, should not be a threat. It looks scary, but our knight here covers our other knight. This, well, that might be a bit scarier. But it's not scary until this knight comes in. And even if this is played, no, it's not. Okay. But now we have this idea, as I mentioned. This should force a bishop trade, I'm pretty sure. I'm not seeing an alternative, at least. Let's say we go here. Could they capture? Well, they could. But I guess this is an ideal position for us. Then the rook has to move and we win this bishop. This pawn, rather. And if we get this, we come in with the queen, hitting the pawn. The rook is, I mean, it's targeted, but it's not under any threat. But they might have to try to defend this. And if they move here, they lose this pawn. So I think this looks quite good for us. This is a safe pre-move. So we have been quite equal in terms of time management this game, which has given us more time to think. And I like those long thinking sessions rather. It gives us more time to get a grasp of the position. It's always bizarre to me when we end a game and our opponent has like 16 minutes on the clock. I don't understand it at all. So now I guess we are awaiting this recapture or capture of our bishop. Well, we might see them trying to protect the bishop. They don't. So we get this. Now this pawn is weak. But capturing it might be scary because of counterplay. But well, we could come in here, and if they hit us like this, then we get this pawn for free, I think. And this also threatens this, which would be the main idea of queen to b7. Now we don't have pressure towards this knight, so we are a lot safer. And we have all eyes on this pawn. This is an idea. They protect this. Is anything stopping us from capturing this pawn? This would be a blunder. A3 might be a move. taking away this square and playing for space. It also takes away this potential infiltration at some point. But is this not a free pawn? Let's have a quick look. Well, if they come in like this, then we get this pawn. This hits. I guess here we would take here and then take this perhaps. But they could take our rook. It does get a bit complicated here if we take this pawn. Can we take the pawn? But I think the situation kind of stays the same if we just play a3 first. So let's go for it. Now they could try to defend here. But if they do come in here, then we still have this idea. Maybe. Or rather, then we have this, which should win this pawn. That's the idea. This knight comes back. Now they can't take like this. Can we come in here? Let's have a quick look at this as well. If we go to this square, where does the knight move? Well, it could come down here. We can't come in here now because of this knight, but I think we might be able to take this pawn. If they hit us, we slide on over. What if they hit us again? Then we get trapped because of this knight move. Or do we get trapped? Yeah, because this knight is here. So maybe we go back to this idea. This is actually a bit tricky. This knight move is passive and it's probably not the best move, but it defends this tactically as it threatens to trap our queen. What about this move? This forces the queen back. But then what? I would like being able to dislodge this knight. I think let's play e4 here. It might not be the best move, but I think I like it. Now, once this moves, this should be a free pawn, and it should also threaten this, because if they threaten us, then we can take the pawn, and if not, we get here. Knight can't really jump in apart from this square. Well, this is not a threat. At least I don't think so. Well, this is a fork. If we take, they come in here. Is this an idea? Well, it might be. Or this. But if they go here and check us, well, then we just come up and hit the knight, I think. Where could this knight go? We have those squares covered. So let's come up. This weakens some squares, but I think it should win material. We have to be careful with our time as well. But our opponent is also getting low in time. However, we spent a bit too long on the last move there. This knight has to go here, here, or here. If they check us, we come up and hit the knight. And this looks like a trapped knight even. They would have to defend it with a piece, which I don't think they could do. What? Oh, they resigned. But why? I don't understand why they resigned. Well, apparently we had a pretty good position here, and once this knight was forced to move, as I mentioned, we were going to brute force some material advantage. But as far as I could see, it was only really a pawn. Well, either way, thanks for the game. I see we didn't make any massive mistakes, but we might still have had some inaccuracies, so let's jump on ahead into our game review. This brings us up to 1434 ELO today. Oh wow, we played with 95.5 today, and our opponent played with 87.8. This looks quite bizarre to me. So this was a good game both by us and by our opponent. Let's start the review. So we went here and got into a Queen's Gambit declined. This was all normal, mainline stuff. Here we should have went to c3 with the knight. And then we would have been in the main line, I think. We went here instead. Castled. We took. c3 was once again the best move for the knight. d2 made sense to me though. I didn't quite like the maneuvering after this. But I guess coming over here perhaps would have been okay. I preferred this square and this square over what we got after this. This was logical. We went back here. In this position, this move was the best. I was a bit wary of moving this rook at this point here because I was afraid that there might be a massive attack on our king, and then I thought this rook might help us out. So we played this first. They played this. Now the a rook should have went over. I guess because this does introduce some threats against our king, for example. Or that's what makes sense to me at least. And then this rook might have some plans over here. I'm not quite sure. Well, it's not. It's a 0.1 difference in the evaluation of the computer. It doesn't really matter all that much, probably. We went up. This was the best square. I guess this was not all that good. I was looking at this. It's good, but the best move is apparently queen to e7. But what if we double then? Then knight to d5. Well, so we avoided knight to d5, hitting our rook. We doubled. Here, bishop to a6 was already okay, I guess. But we played it in this position. This was probably an inaccuracy even. The computer doesn't quite say it was. But knight, or now it's apparently better on the deeper engine here. But knight to c4, this is a move I didn't see. This doesn't strike me as natural at all. What does this seek to accomplish? It hits the queen. Yeah, and then a3. Now this is some bizarre chess. Blocking our plans here in attack. That makes no sense to me, at least. We played this, but the other idea I had here was, yeah, did this work? No, it didn't. Have to be here. We might have been able to escape like this, as we looked at, but they do get some counterplay down here, I expect. No, that's not the best move even. What's the best move? This, coming back, hitting our rook, and then they get a pawn, and we don't really have any material advantage. But in this position, once again, we would have had this, I guess. But yeah, of course, once this rook comes down, if we take this pawn, we lose ours, and we don't win a pawn. Well, we went here, they jumped back. We went up with the pawn. This was all good, and here our opponent resigned. This didn't work, we looked at this, then they lose the knight, I'm pretty sure at least. Like this, yeah. Our king would have opened up, but we might have just hid in on h1 and been sliding on over with our rooks, for example, and hitting their king. But honestly, what happens if they go back here? Then we take, right? Yeah, but we also have the immediate b7 idea, which we briefly looked at, and h4. I would have not played h4. This was okay. If we get hit here, we take the pawn, as I mentioned. And if we go here, this doesn't work because we hit this pawn and this is defended in this line. So this is all good. So we got a great game today. I think it's was it 95.5? It's been a while since we got such a good accuracy, I think. So that's quite reassuring. Once again, thanks a lot for the game. Yeah, I always try to pronounce the names, but Wowlinho 1. Yeah, let's pretend that's how it's read. Please do come here. If this is Brazilian or something and you know the pronunciation, then feel free to correct me. I don't know how to pronounce this. Well, anyways, thanks to our opponent from Brazil here. They played a great game as well. Thank you to all of the viewers for watching to the end of the video. This has been our game for today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye!